It was a quiet afternoon in a small, sun-warmed neighborhood. The streets were calm, lined with houses that seemed ordinary at first glance. But behind one of those windows, life was far from ordinary, far from safe. A woman who lived nearby had noticed something troubling for weeks. She was a kind-hearted soul, someone who couldn't look the other way when she sensed someone in danger. She didn't know the details yet, only that a child lived in one of the houses across the street, and something about the child's behavior made her uneasy. From her porch, she watched quietly. The child rarely came outside to play, and when they did, it was always for a few minutes, always with a look of fear in their eyes. Their small frame seemed fragile, their movements hesitant. Sometimes the child would flinch at the sound of a raised voice or shrink into a corner when an adult approached. The woman's heart ached, and she knew she couldn't ignore it. At first, she tried to understand the situation from a distance. She watched the interactions between the child and the adults in the house. There were signs that made her stomach twist. Bruises that peeked through the sleeves of the child's shirt, a constant fear in their eyes, and the way they seemed to shrink at the slightest correction. The woman had seen fear like this before, not often, but enough to recognize it. She knew that this child needed help, and if no one stepped in, the situation could get worse. It was not easy for her to decide what to do. She worried about what people would think. Some neighbors might accuse her of overstepping, of interfering where she didn't belong, but she couldn't let those thoughts stop her. Every time she looked at that small, frightened face, she felt a pull she couldn't resist. She knew she had to act, even if it meant stepping into danger herself. One afternoon, she saw the child standing near the back door of the house, holding a thin piece of bread. Their hands were shaking, and the child looked around nervously as if waiting for someone to appear. That was the moment the woman realized the situation was urgent. She stepped off her porch and approached slowly, speaking softly so as not to startle the child. "Hey there," she said gently. "Are you okay?" The child flinched and looked at her with wide, fearful eyes. There was a pause, a hesitation, as if deciding whether this stranger was safe or not. Finally, the child whispered, I'm fine." But the woman knew the child wasn't fine. No child should live in fear like that. She decided she couldn't wait for someone else to intervene. She made a plan to get the child out of that house safely. She reached out to local authorities and child protection services, explaining the situation clearly, without exaggeration, without fear. She shared what she had seen and expressed her concern for the child's immediate safety. While waiting for help to arrive, she tried to make the child feel safe. She brought over small things, a warm blanket, a sandwich, and a soft smile. She didn't push the child to speak, didn't ask questions that might scare them further. She simply let the child know that someone cared, that someone was on their side. Days passed before the child protection team was able to act. During that time, the woman became a quiet presence in the child's life. She offered a comforting word, a safe place to sit, a listening ear. She noticed the small changes, the child's shoulders relaxing just slightly, the grip on their little blanket loosening, a tiny smile when they thought no one was looking. These small victories meant everything. When the day finally came for the child to be removed from the unsafe environment, the woman accompanied them. She held their hand as they walked out of that house, guiding them into a world that felt both frightening and full of hope. The child clung to her as if they had finally found a protector, someone who would not let them go. The woman didn't stop at rescue. She knew that safety was only the first step. The child needed stability, love, and care to heal from the trauma they had endured. She connected with social workers and counselors, learning what she could do to help. She offered her home as a temporary safe space, providing meals, warmth, and a routine that the child had never known before. At first, it wasn't easy. The child didn't trust easily. They were quiet, withdrawn, and sometimes angry. They would lash out, testing boundaries, pushing away the very person who was trying to protect them. The woman remained patient. She never raised her voice, never showed frustration. She understood that trust had to be earned, that healing was a slow and delicate process. She spent hours talking to the child, sharing stories, reading books, and playing games that encouraged laughter and creativity. She celebrated small achievements, trying a new food, smiling without fear, sleeping through the night. Each step forward was a victory, each smile a reminder that the child was more than their past, more than the pain they had endured. The community around them began to notice the change as well. Neighbors who had been skeptical saw the child's transformation and started to offer support. Some brought gifts, others shared words of encouragement. The woman's quiet bravery had not only rescued one child, but had inspired others to care, to pay attention, and to act when it mattered most. But the journey was far from over. The woman knew the child would carry the scars of their past for years to come. She didn't promise a perfect life, only a life where the child could grow safely, learn to trust again, and discover joy in ways they never thought possible. She believed in resilience, in the human capacity to heal when given the chance. Night after night, she stayed by the child's side when nightmares came. She held their hand through tears and whispered words of comfort when memories of fear surfaced. Slowly, the child began to relax in her presence. Their laughter returned, shy at first, then louder, filling the spaces that had once been silent with joy. The woman often reflected on why she had acted when others might have looked away. She realized that sometimes courage wasn't about facing danger head-on in a dramatic way. Sometimes courage was quiet, steady, and patient. It was about noticing a child in need, deciding to act, and staying by their side through every struggle. By the end of that first year, the child had begun to blossom. They were attending school regularly, making friends, and engaging in activities that once seemed impossible. The bond between them and the woman had grown strong, rooted in trust, care, and a shared understanding that they were safe now. Through it all, the woman never saw herself as a hero. She saw herself as someone who couldn't turn away when someone needed help. She knew the world could be harsh, but she also knew that small acts of kindness could change lives, could create hope where there was none, and so, the first chapter of their story ended with a sense of cautious optimism. The child was safe, beginning to heal, and learning that the world could be a place of care and warmth. The woman had acted on instinct, on empathy, and in doing so she had given a life a chance to flourish. Little did either of them know that this act of bravery and kindness would echo far into the future. One day the child, grown into a confident adult, would return in a way neither could have imagined, bringing the story full circle in a moment of gratitude, love, and recognition. But for now, the focus was on the present: safety, healing, and the slow, steady rebuilding of a life that had once known only fear. Every day brought a new challenge, a new opportunity, a new reason to hope. And in the quiet moments when the world felt heavy and uncertain, the woman and the child would simply sit together, finding peace in the knowledge that they were not alone. The child's journey had just begun, and the woman's role as protector, mentor, and guide had only just begun to unfold. But in that first year, the seeds of transformation had been planted, seeds that would grow strong and enduring, nurtured by patience, love, and an unwavering belief in the power of human kindness. Life after the rescue was not simple, but it was better. The child had been taken out of the unsafe house, away from fear and cruelty, and into a place that promised care, warmth, and a chance to grow. The woman who had stepped in never saw herself as a hero, but in the child's eyes she became a source of hope, someone who made the impossible feel real. At first, the days were slow. The child struggled to trust anyone. They had learned from a young age that adults could hurt, that words could sting, and that promises were often broken. So when the woman spoke gently or offered small comforts, the child hesitated, unsure if this new world was safe. They flinched at sudden movements, hesitated before answering questions, and sometimes ran to hide when emotions became too strong. The woman understood this hesitation. She knew that trust was earned, not demanded. She never forced the child to speak or share feelings. Instead, she showed up every day, offering a routine that was gentle and predictable. Meals were served at regular times, rooms were kept warm and tidy, and the child's small needs were met without question. There was safety in this consistency, and slowly the child began to feel it. One of the first breakthroughs came in small, almost invisible ways. The child started to eat more regularly, finishing meals without the nervous glances that had accompanied food before. They began to spend more time in the living room instead of hiding in the corners of their temporary room. Little by little, laughter crept into their day, a quiet, shy sound at first, then gradually louder, more confident. The woman introduced small routines to help the child heal. They would read together, taking turns telling stories. At first, the child barely spoke, but over time they began to describe their day, share little thoughts, and even ask questions. Each word, each sentence was a victory. It was not just about learning language. It was about learning to trust again, learning to believe that someone could listen without judgment. Outside of the home, the woman helped the child integrate into the world. She arranged for the child to attend school, where new challenges awaited. At first, the child was nervous. The noise of classrooms, the chatter of other children, and the attention from teachers were overwhelming. But the woman never left their side. She walked them to school, stayed nearby when needed, and celebrated small victories. The first day when the child raised their hand to answer a question, the first time they made a friend, these moments were more important than any material gift. It was not always easy. The child had moments of anger and sadness. They sometimes lashed out, not because they disliked the woman, but because emotions that had been buried for years needed an outlet. The woman never responded with anger or punishment. She listened, held space for their feelings, and reminded them gently that it was okay to feel hurt. It was okay to cry. It was okay to be scared. She also encouraged small joys. They went to parks where the child could run without fear. They cooked simple meals together, letting the child stir, pour, and taste without pressure. Music filled the home, and sometimes they danced in the kitchen, laughing in ways that felt foreign at first but soon natural. These were not grand gestures, but they mattered. Every smile, every laugh, every moment of calm was a step away from the pain of the past. The woman also sought professional help. Counselors and therapists visited, helping the child understand their emotions and cope with trauma. At first, the child was resistant, unsure of talking to strangers about painful memories. But the woman encouraged them gently, never forcing the issue, always reminding them that speaking about feelings could be healing, not harmful. Over time, therapy became a tool, a support that worked alongside the safety and love of the home. Community support played a role as well. Neighbors, initially curious and cautious, began to offer quiet encouragement. Some brought small gifts or treats, others simply smiled when they saw the child outside. These gestures, while small, helped the child feel connected to the world beyond their immediate safe space. They learned that kindness existed in places outside the home, and slowly they began to believe it. School became a turning point. Teachers noticed the child's intelligence and curiosity. With guidance, the child began to excel academically, finding confidence in subjects that once seemed impossible. Each grade passed, each assignment completed, was a victory over the fear and neglect that had once held them back. The woman celebrated these successes quietly, knowing that the child's growth was their reward. Friendships began to form. At first, the child was hesitant, unsure if peers could be trusted, but over time, bonds were made. The woman encouraged healthy friendships, teaching the child to recognize kindness, to stand up for themselves, and to be compassionate to others. Through these interactions, the child learned more about human connection, something they had been denied for so long. Despite the progress, there were setbacks. Memories of the past returned in nightmares or sudden fears. The child sometimes cried uncontrollably or withdrew completely, but the woman was always there. She would sit with them in silence, hold their hand, and offer reassurance. She understood that healing was not linear, and that patience was essential. Each setback was temporary, a reminder that trauma takes time to overcome. Holidays and celebrations became moments of joy and learning. The woman introduced traditions that gave the child a sense of belonging. They celebrated birthdays with small parties, shared stories about their family, and created rituals that the child could look forward to. These moments were about more than fun. They were about creating memories that were safe, loving, and full of hope. One of the most important aspects of this part of the journey was teaching the child self-worth. The woman constantly reinforced that the child was valuable, capable, and deserving of love. She encouraged them to express themselves, to take pride in their work, and to believe in their own strength. Slowly, the child began to internalize these lessons. They started to speak with confidence, make decisions for themselves, and take steps toward independence, all within the safe environment the woman had nurtured. The bond between them deepened with every passing day. The child began to see the woman not just as a protector, but as a guide, a mentor, and a constant presence in their life. Trust, once fragile and tentative, grew strong and steady. The child learned that it was possible to rely on someone, to feel safe, and to love without fear. By the end of the second year, the child had changed in remarkable ways. They laughed freely, approached the world with curiosity, and engaged with others in ways that were once impossible. The transformation was not complete. They would carry the memory of fear and pain. But the foundation for a bright future had been laid. The woman had given them more than safety. She had given them hope, love, and a path toward healing. In quiet moments, the woman would reflect on the journey so far. She knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but she also knew that what they had accomplished together was extraordinary. The child had begun to see the world not as a place of danger, but as a place where kindness existed, where people cared, and where life could be filled with opportunity and joy. The small victories mattered more than anyone else could see. The child sleeping peacefully through the night, a smile appearing naturally. The first time they said, "I love you," without hesitation. These moments were the proof of what love, patience, and care could achieve. The woman's courage had not only saved a life, it had built a future. And though the story of healing was ongoing, this chapter closed with a sense of hope. The child had begun to grow into themselves, discovering strength, confidence, and a sense of belonging they had never known before. The woman had created a safe space where growth was possible, a space where love was constant and trust could flourish. It was clear that their journey together was just beginning, but the path had been set. One act of courage, one decision to intervene, had created a ripple that would carry through years of care, learning, and transformation. The child was no longer defined by fear. They were defined by possibility. Life had improved in so many ways, but it was not without challenges. The child had grown more confident and happy, but life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. The woman had always known that rescuing the child was only the first step, and now the work of guiding, supporting, and nurturing them through real-life obstacles had begun. School brought its own difficulties. Though the child had made friends and shown improvement in academics, they sometimes faced teasing or bullying from peers. Some children were unkind, making fun of their past or questioning why they seemed different. At first, the child wanted to retreat, to hide again as they had done for so many years. The woman noticed the change in their demeanor immediately, the slumped shoulders, the quiet voice, the way they avoided eye contact. She didn't scold or demand. Instead, she talked quietly with the child, asking questions about what happened, letting them tell their story in their own way. She taught them how to respond, how to stand up for themselves without anger, and how to protect their feelings. Sometimes they practiced responses together in the living room, turning it into a game that made the child feel safer. Slowly, the child learned that the world could be difficult, but it could also be faced with courage and preparation. The home, though safe, also presented challenges. The woman had dedicated herself to helping the child, but it came at a personal cost. Money was tight, and she often had to make sacrifices to provide everything the child needed. She worked long hours, skipped luxuries, and often went without. Yet she never complained because she knew the importance of what she was doing. There were nights she sat quietly in her kitchen, exhausted, counting bills and wondering how she could stretch the budget further. But she always found a way. Even emotional challenges appeared. The child sometimes acted out, not out of malice, but from lingering fear and trauma. Small triggers, a loud voice, a sudden movement, could send them into panic. On those days, the woman had to be patient beyond measure. She would hold the child, calm them with steady words, and wait for the storm of fear to pass. There were no easy solutions, and no amount of reassurance could immediately erase years of pain. The woman also had to face judgment from people who did not understand. Some neighbors whispered, questioning why she involved herself in the child's life so deeply. Some people assumed the child was too difficult, or that the woman was overstepping. Each comment stung, but she chose to focus on what mattered most: the child's safety, growth, and happiness. Their well-being was more important than anyone else's opinion. The child, too, faced internal struggles. Sometimes they felt guilt for leaving the unsafe home, even though they had been the victim. They struggled with anger toward the adults who had hurt them, and confusion about why life had been so unfair. These emotions would manifest in different ways: withdrawing from activities, refusing to speak, or lashing out. The woman always met these moments with understanding. She reminded the child that feelings were valid, that healing wasn't about being perfect, and that it was okay to feel hurt, sad, or angry. Outside influences also tested their progress. Teachers, while generally supportive, sometimes did not fully understand trauma, and this caused friction. Assignments that seemed simple could become overwhelming for the child. and misunderstandings with classmates occasionally led to frustration or tears. The woman became an advocate, communicating with school staff and helping them understand how to support a child who had endured so much. Her persistence ensured that the child was treated with patience and kindness, even when others struggled to understand. Friends of the child brought both joy and challenges. While healthy friendships were encouraged, there were times when jealousy, misunderstanding, or peer pressure created tension. The child had to navigate the complicated world of social interactions, learning to recognize who was trustworthy and who might cause harm. The woman guided them carefully, offering advice without forcing decisions, allowing the child to grow in confidence while still providing a safety net. Health issues also emerged occasionally. Stress and trauma had left some physical and emotional scars. The child sometimes experienced nightmares, panic attacks, or unexplained illnesses. Each time the woman responded with calm care, consulting doctors or therapists as needed, and never dismissing the child's experiences. Through these challenges, the child learned to listen to their body, to recognize emotions, and to communicate needs effectively. Despite all the setbacks, the woman never wavered in her belief that the child could thrive. She celebrated each success, no matter how small, finishing a school project, making a new friend, or speaking up in class. Each step forward was proof that healing was possible, even if it came with bumps along the road. The child also began to show remarkable resilience. They learned to use coping strategies introduced by counselors and mentors, such as deep breathing, journaling, or talking about feelings with someone they trusted. Over time, these tools became second nature, helping the child manage moments of stress, fear, or frustration. This growth was not immediate, and there were setbacks, but the progress was undeniable. The woman also had moments of doubt. She wondered if she was doing enough, if she could continue to provide the stability and love the child needed. Nights were often spent reflecting, questioning her decisions, and hoping that the child felt safe and supported. But each time she saw the child's small victories, her confidence returned. She realized that dedication, patience, and love mattered more than perfection. Community involvement became another source of challenge and support. Occasionally, the child faced discrimination or misunderstanding from adults outside their immediate circle. The woman worked tirelessly to address these issues, teaching the child how to respond and advocating for fairness. At the same time, she encouraged community members to offer positive support, creating an environment where the child could feel safe both at home and outside. The woman also nurtured the child's talents and interests. Whether it was drawing, reading, sports, or music, she encouraged exploration and practice. These activities provided outlets for creativity and expression, helping the child build confidence and a sense of identity beyond their past trauma. Every drawing, every story written, every small achievement became a testament to the child's growth and potential. Yet, even with all these efforts, there were moments of fear. Sometimes the child would remember past abuse vividly, triggered by sounds, smells, or situations. These memories could feel overwhelming, and the child would retreat into themselves. The woman never judged or scolded. She simply held space for the child, letting them process their feelings at their own pace. Over time, these moments became less frequent, though never fully gone. The woman's unwavering presence taught the child a powerful lesson, that one person's love and dedication could create safety, stability, and hope. The child learned that life could be harsh, but it could also be filled with care and guidance. Through setbacks and challenges, they discovered inner strength, resilience, and the ability to overcome obstacles. There were quiet, beautiful moments too. A morning where the child woke up without fear, a day when they spoke confidently to a teacher, a weekend spent laughing at a simple joke. The small victories formed a patchwork of healing, showing that life could be joyful and fulfilling. The woman celebrated each moment silently, knowing that these seemingly small steps were building a foundation for a lifetime. Even in the face of difficulty, the bond between the woman and the child deepened. Challenges did not weaken their connection. They strengthened it. The child knew that no matter what happened, school difficulties, social struggles, or moments of fear, the woman would be there, steady, patient, and loving. By the end of this chapter in their journey, the child had faced setbacks and challenges but had grown stronger through them. They had learned to navigate fear, build trust, and manage emotions in ways that had once seemed impossible. They had discovered resilience and courage, and they had learned that love and support could create a life that felt safe and meaningful. The woman reflected often on the path they had traveled together. She knew the road ahead would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew the child had grown capable of facing them. Their journey had taught her that patience, dedication, and empathy could overcome even the most difficult obstacles. And though life would continue to test them, the foundation they had built, trust, care, and love, would always remain strong. In the quiet evenings, when they sat together and shared small moments of laughter or reflection, the woman felt a deep sense of purpose. She had helped the child take the first steps toward a future that was no longer defined by fear. She had given them the tools, the guidance, and the support to face life with confidence. And though setbacks would always appear, they were no longer insurmountable. The child, now growing in strength and awareness, began to look forward with hope rather than fear. They understood that life was complex and challenging, but they also knew that kindness, courage, and perseverance could change everything. Each challenge they faced became a lesson, each setback an opportunity to grow stronger, and each day a chance to move further from the shadows of the past. The years had passed quickly, though it often didn't feel that way. The child, once small, timid, and fearful, was now growing into a young adult, strong and confident in ways the woman had only dreamed of. Their laughter filled the house more often. Their voice carried self-assurance, and their curiosity about the world seemed endless. The transformation was remarkable, but it had not been easy. Every step of progress had been earned through patience, guidance, and love. As the child grew older, they began to take more responsibility for their own life. School was no longer a struggle, but a place where they could shine. They pursued subjects they enjoyed, participated in clubs, and discovered talents they had never realized they had. The woman encouraged independence, helping them plan their future without pressure, always reminding them that she was there to support, not to control. There were evenings when the young adult would sit across the table from the woman, quietly thinking about the future. College, career choices, and new opportunities were topics of conversation. The woman listened, offering advice drawn from experience but never dictating the path. She wanted the young adult to make choices for themselves, to learn the value of independence, and to feel the confidence that comes from standing on their own. Leaving home became a possibility that neither of them had imagined years ago. The idea of moving to a new city for school or work brought excitement but also a sense of fear. The young adult wondered if they were truly ready to face the world alone, to leave the safety and comfort of the home that had been their sanctuary for so long. The woman, understanding the mix of emotions, offered reassurance. She reminded them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. Preparing for departure was a delicate process. The woman helped the young adult pack, organize, and plan for the transition. They discussed finances, living arrangements, and ways to handle challenges independently. There were tears, moments of hesitation, and fears expressed quietly in the evening hours. But there was also pride, both in the young adult for reaching this stage and in the woman for guiding them here. The day of departure arrived with a mixture of celebration and sadness. Friends, teachers, and mentors who had supported the child throughout the years came to offer encouragement. They celebrated the growth, resilience, and achievements of someone who had once been scared and withdrawn. The woman stood quietly watching, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only saved a life years ago, but she had nurtured it, shaped it, and prepared it for a future that now seemed full of possibility. The farewell itself was emotional. The young adult hugged the woman tightly, a mix of gratitude, love, and the bittersweet realization that their journey of independence was beginning. Words were exchanged, thankful, honest, and heartfelt, but sometimes the silence spoke louder than words. They promised to stay in touch, to continue sharing experiences, and to never forget the home and person who had made everything possible. After the departure, the house felt quieter. The woman missed the daily presence of the young adult, the laughter, the questions, the small moments that had filled the rooms. Yet she felt joy in their absence, knowing that they were pursuing opportunities and experiences that were rightfully theirs. Her role had shifted from constant guide to proud supporter from afar. The young adult faced new challenges in the outside world. College, work, and independent living brought obstacles that tested their skills, resilience, and confidence. There were moments of homesickness, doubts, and struggles with new responsibilities. But the foundation built over the years, the patience, trust, and guidance provided by the woman, gave them the strength to navigate difficulties. They drew on the lessons learned at home, to ask for help when needed, to face challenges head-on, and to believe in their own abilities. Letters, calls, and visits kept the connection strong. The young adult often shared experiences, accomplishments, and lessons learned with the woman. They talked about friendships, new adventures, and moments of struggle, seeking advice and comfort when needed. Each conversation reminded both of them of the bond they had built, the trust that had been nurtured, and the profound impact of kindness and guidance. During this time, the woman reflected on the journey they had traveled together. She remembered the first days of fear, the slow steps of trust, the breakthroughs of laughter and achievement, and the challenges that had tested both of them. She realized that while her role had shifted, the connection remained powerful. The young adult's success was a testament to the enduring impact of patience, love, and unwavering support. The young adult, too, grew more independent and self-reliant. They found joy in learning, exploring new experiences, and making decisions for themselves. They embraced the opportunities before them, drawing strength from the lessons taught at home. Confidence grew naturally as they navigated the complexities of adulthood, each challenge reinforcing the values instilled during their years of healing. There were moments of pride and achievement that both celebrated quietly. Graduation, completing a challenging project, or achieving a personal goal became milestones of not just skill, but resilience and growth. The woman often marveled at the journey, understanding that each achievement was more than an individual success. It was a shared triumph born from years of dedication, care, and mutual trust. At the same time, the woman recognized that life would continue to present challenges. Independence did not mean a life without obstacles. The young adult would face disappointments, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty, but the lessons learned, the guidance received, and the strength built over years of love and care provided a solid foundation. They could approach the world with courage, wisdom, and compassion. The bond between them remained unbroken. Visits became opportunities to share experiences, discuss life lessons, and reflect on growth. Each reunion was filled with laughter, stories, and heartfelt conversations. The young adult appreciated the support and guidance, understanding that the woman had been more than a guardian. She had been a mentor, a confidant, and a source of unwavering love. Through all of this, the woman continued to live her life with quiet pride. She knew that her actions years ago had changed a life profoundly. She understood that love, patience, and guidance were powerful forces that could transform fear into courage, uncertainty into confidence, and trauma into resilience. Her efforts had not only saved a life, but had shaped a future filled with hope and possibility. The young adult, now fully stepping into independence, carried with them the lessons learned at home. They faced the world with empathy, kindness, and a deep understanding of the importance of support and compassion. The values instilled by the woman guided their decisions, relationships, and approach to life, shaping them into someone capable of not just surviving, but thriving. As time passed, the woman reflected on the profound journey they had shared. She remembered the small moments of fear, the breakthroughs of trust, the quiet victories, and the challenges overcome. She understood that the greatest gift she had given was not just safety or guidance, but the belief that the child could grow, heal, and achieve greatness. The young adult thrived in their independence, yet never forgot the home and person who had made it possible. They carried the lessons of patience, trust, resilience, and love into every aspect of life. Their achievements were not just personal milestones. They were a reflection of the journey, the guidance, and the unwavering support that had shaped them. In the quiet moments of reflection, the woman felt fulfillment beyond words. She had witnessed a transformation that few could imagine, had nurtured a life from fear to confidence, and had helped create a foundation for a future filled with hope. Her courage, patience, and love had created ripples that would continue to shape a life, long after the initial act of rescue. And though the young adult was now independent, the connection remained strong, a bond forged through years of shared experiences, challenges overcome, and victories celebrated. The woman knew that her impact would endure, not as a moment in time, but as a lasting presence in the life of someone who had been given a second chance. The chapter closed on a note of quiet triumph. The child had grown into a confident, independent adult, ready to face the world with strength, wisdom, and resilience. The woman had fulfilled a role that went far beyond rescue. She had nurtured, guided, and empowered a life. And in doing so, she had proven that one act of courage and kindness could echo through years, shaping futures, creating hope, and leaving an enduring mark on the world. Years had passed since the young adult had left home to pursue their dreams. Life had been a journey full of challenges, victories, and lessons learned along the way. Though far from the woman who had nurtured them, her influence was a constant presence in their life. Every decision they made, every step forward, was quietly shaped by the love, guidance, and courage she had instilled years ago. The young adult had achieved many things they once only dreamed of. They had completed their education, built a stable career, and surrounded themselves with friends who appreciated and supported them. Life was full, yet in the quiet moments they often thought about the woman who had changed everything. The gratitude in their heart grew with each passing year, a feeling that could not be measured in words alone. One day, after much thought and careful planning, the young adult decided it was time to return. Not just to visit, but to show gratitude in a way that reflected the depth of everything the woman had done for them. They wanted to acknowledge not just the rescue, but the years of patience, guidance, and love that had allowed them to thrive. The decision brought excitement and nerves. They wondered how the woman would react, how much she knew of the impact she had made, and whether words could ever truly capture their gratitude. The young adult prepared carefully. They thought about what to say, what gestures might communicate their appreciation, and how to make the moment meaningful. They brought small tokens of appreciation, not as material gifts, but as symbols of love, respect, and acknowledgement. They also carried with them the confidence and resilience that had been nurtured over the years, the very qualities the woman had helped them build. The walk to the woman's home was filled with anticipation. Memories of childhood, moments of fear, laughter, guidance, and care all flooded their mind. They remembered the first days after rescue, the slow steps of trust, the victories of small achievements, and the lessons learned through challenges. Each memory reinforced the profound debt of gratitude they felt, a debt they intended to honor in person. When the young adult reached the door, they paused, taking a deep breath. The heart raced not with fear but with excitement and reverence. They knocked firmly, then waited, unsure if the woman would recognize them immediately, though they hoped she would. The door opened slowly, and there she stood, the woman whose courage, patience, and love had shaped a life. Recognition came instantly, not just in the eyes, but in the smile that spread across her face. Time had passed, yet the bond they shared was unmistakable. Words failed for a brief moment, replaced by the quiet understanding that connected them more powerfully than any speech could. The young adult stepped inside, overwhelmed with emotion, and the woman welcomed them with open arms, a mixture of surprise and deep affection evident in her expression. "I've come to thank you," the young adult began, voice steady but filled with emotion, "not just for saving me, but for every single day after that. For every lesson, every moment of patience, every word of encouragement. I wouldn't be who I am today without you." The woman listened quietly, eyes moist, heart full. She had never sought recognition. She had acted out of instinct, compassion, and a deep sense of responsibility. Yet hearing the words aloud, seeing the person before her who had grown and thrived because of her actions, was a moment that filled her with profound fulfillment. The young adult continued, describing the journey since leaving home, the challenges faced, victories celebrated, lessons